Hi, I'm Ken McClane. This is a poem by Mary Gilliland. Hug. Out I go to the summer field where the grass blows pollen on my face. The crickets are small, not hiding yet. They sing only from the bellies of birds. This is the homely landscape of secrets. Haunting lullabies, old songs, enfolding the dream of the big sky. A world where youth moves, gambling, gazing yonder. In this early, lovely poem by Mary Gilliland, she suggests what is so important to her and to us. How the world is about the sung and the unsung, the diminished but not irrelevant, the fact that everything unfolds and enfolds, that ritual is essential if you are to face love and longing, that youth, which is not merely a function of age, but a locus of wisdom, brings us back to the world's great calculus, the truism instilled in my church days, that I am in you and you are in me, and all life is sacred. We're here today, St. Patrick's Day, at a poetry reading at the celebration for a magnificent new book, because ritual matters. And the book we are welcoming into the world, EMBER Days, is about the value of ritual, what it provides us, the great spiritual provender, and when it fails us, because capitalism, and when it fails us, because of lack of will or our inability to foursquare false gods, war, rampant capitalism, abject science. Monsanto, the creator of Agent Orange, is mentioned in EMBER Days, and in a poem, the bosses of operation, a huckstering man, the boss, does nothing and then does it better, but he'll be certain to ignore the diagonal and get hit by a car. He'll milk them for all they've got. I've known Mary since 1969, when she and I were fresh people at Cornell. I met her in the orientation where we both had read a number of books, including Allen Ginsberg's Howl. That day, we began a friendship that is long, deep, and interminate. I see Mary at a reading or at Ithaca Library, sometimes after many years, and we continue our conversation as if it were never interrupted. We both worked on Rainy Day, Cornell's literary magazine in the 1970s. We both found ourselves remaining in Ithaca, she with Cornell's Knight Writing Institute, which she helped create, I with the English department. We were both in a film together, which thankfully never got made. But it mirrored two people, young in love, with the attendant anxieties of world, race, coming of age. I was in the class because I wanted to learn about film, but to get admitted to the oversubscribed seminar, the director asked me if I'd be willing to act, to be the nominal star. Shows you how bad things were. There wasn't yet a woman to play my love interest. He'd find someone. Amazingly, he saw Mary trapsing on the art squad and thought she'd be wonderful. He didn't even know her. And thank goodness the film didn't get made, but it seemed an omen portentous that the universe mysteriously had cemented us. Mary has won many literary prizes, been invited to the most prestigious writing colonies, including the Fine Arts Work Center in Prophetstown. She has two fine books from Coda Press, The Ruined Castle Garden, and today's handsome volume. She's published in many of the nation's best journals, Poetry, the Seneca Review, Notre Dame Review. She's been a friend and colleague of many fine poets, Gary Snyder, Carolyn Crochet, Cynthia Hogue, the late Reverend Daniel Barrigan, for whom she not only created a wonderful writer's blog, but was one of his dearest friends. I recall her work with America's Hard to Find Weekend, where Barrigan, then a fugitive for his anti-war work, with Mary's help, was brilliantly secreted into Barton Hall to a throng of 10,000 admirers, if any of you remember that. It was amazing, right? Yeah. That day, I was asked to go up to the FBI and ask the officers, they really were as prominent as a bad toupee, where the bathroom was. Anything to disrupt their desire to arrest Barragan. Barragan spoke, disappeared in a stealth of puppetry. No one got arrested. It was brilliant and glorious, and we were so young and hopeful. All of Mary's poet friends are people of interiority and of witness. People of consummate faith, sometimes Catholicism, sometimes Buddhism, sometimes animism. All of them, like Mary, grieve for the world where beings suffer, and all of them detest war. In Amber Days, there is one of the best anti-war poems since Gwendolyn Brooks' Gay Chaps at the War sonnet sequence. In Gilliland's lyric, Abel, rich with anaphora, we confront a list of those hackneyed phrases so blithely professed to justify the unjustifiable. We oiled the ocean, we arched the anguish, we rushed the river, we loved the Lord, we crawled the chasm, we bore the burden, we fired the furnace, we sank the stars, we flew the flag, we won the war. Did you hear? The war, did you hear? With all the martial hoopla, the call to arms and braggadocio, bad things will ensue. Sadly, after all is said and the tired justifications are parried, there may be no one left alive to listen. And the horror will rise again. Ukraine, Gaza. There are 50 wars on the planet as we speak. As many of you know, Mary helped create the labyrinth at the Foundation of Light in Ellis Hollow, the beautiful natural place of contemplation and discovery. And I bring this to mind because Amber Days works like a labyrinth. Its poems invite you in, you move through the many possible conjoinings and interpretations. Mary's love of nature, her knowledge of how we must protect the biosphere, her deft commingling of fern and mythos, her profound sense of the dangers of rampant consumerism and the overarching undiminishable lyricism all bring us into a world of never-ending surprise and evangelizing wisdom. I love her off-rhymes, the elegant phrasing reminiscent of Wendell Berry, and the humor of Phyllis Janowitz, the ways in which we can measure up and be measured, the great focus on the natural world, reminiscent of Mary Oliver, and the brilliance of Adrienne Rich, the allusions to Donne, Sappho, Virginia Woolf. There are moments of great love, Mary's poem taken, and unmitigated need, and moments where the world frowns on an all too undisciplined sense of romanticism. I think here of the reproving grandmother in the lyric Irish Eyes, whose, quote, famished eyes lean in recognition. There is also a great sense of the elegiac, and even moments where, as one of Mary's narrator's muses, one might hope to slit one's wrist. But these are always countered by Mary's mellifluousness and unmatched literary mastery. Good books teach one how to read them. And I'd argue that Amber Days is one long poem, each lyric building on the others, like a spirited family dinner. And the titles of the poem are fetching. Is a transcendently beautiful place not to be ours? I think here of Walt Whitman's great appellations, while lilacs last at the dooryard bloomed. There are many poems in Amber Days I admire. Infinitives, all those creases, up with people, I am the blind you wanted, Tesla on a leash, turning towards the windswept garden, and many others. Let me end with a poem which so beautifully does what only Mary can. The Old Man Brought Home. My father once wore one shoe and one slipper, pressing star moss and vole tracks, waking steep land. A stubbled saint, fizzling in a 20th century incarnation, afraid to use the cellar stair, or to digest the darkness that has been his middle age. He broke off old branches. As his hand brushed their paper green lichens, brittleness pleased a slender novelist tossed inside, who spoke in a cobbler bent over, blue suede or white leather at his bench. What a poignant lyric. What a beautiful defense of romanticism. We are all caught betwixt and between dreams and imaginings. Mary employs the lichen because it reminds us of John Muir's truism. When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. We forget that nature itself is one vast miracle transcending the reality of night and nothingness. And the lichen, too, is not a plant, but a hybrid of fungi and algae, something that has lived since the beginning of time and is omnipresent in 90% of the planet. A living reminder that the supreme vital force of life is not competition, but interdependence, that we survive and thrive not through combat, but through corroboration. And so, the father in the poem is inspirited by many incarnations. He is an amalgam of the seemingly inchoate, the pairing of the mismatched footwear, and the example of the trans history he carries, but may not yet be able to unburden. This poem reminds me of my dead father, caught in Alzheimer's, but still the man he was, fiercely loyal, and my mother-in-law, now 96, who, like my wife, is home to the past and present, the great commingling that allows her to love me, despicable person I often am. The father in Mary's poem is both tough and still progeny of that tender novelist brushed inside. We are all our mismatched incarnations, our thatched together, sometimes dangerous selves. This poem, like so much else in Mary's work, makes me want to cry and exalt. We've come full circle from the poem that began this praise song, Mary's poem Hugs, enfolding the dream of blue sky. Her lyricism persists in the sense that we are all a supreme congress of competing desires, that we manifest at our best like a dowsing stick, the world's invisible seas. Please buy this book. It argues mightily for life, poetry, and wonder.
Yeah. I left my hearing aids at home.
You're a lucky man, Peter.
All right. Thank you for the hat, Ken.
You're welcome.
And thank you for that 7-star introduction. I'm immensely grateful to you for your words. What was it?
Louder?
Louder. No. Okay, I'll be here. Can you hear me now?
I can turn you up.
So I'm immensely grateful for Ken's words, for his friendship, and for his existence. We are still here.
I'm gonna lift this up. Huh, okay.
Okay,
Crank you up.
we are adjusting now. So
Raise the mic.
raise the mic. Okay,
Okay, you'll have to step into it a little bit more.
okay. How's that? Is that good? All right. All right. Can I whisper too? Oh, good. Okay. So I'm going to give you some background on the new book. And that is 2 poems from the other recent book, The Devil's Fools. These are kind of from life. They're a little more background on me. So I say stationary?
I think it's good.
Okay.
Just don't wander too much.
The way I talk. And no matter what you hear, this is a love poem. The way I talk. Anyone who overheard would wink you up a tree, or think our loving could be spared my going at you on a bear trail in the wood. You did not woo this banshee. You cameoed a smiling girl to spend steady days with, got tangled with my scrimshaw toes, looping the strand of upstate winters. That night of frozen broccoli and cod, port, forbidden planet, my apartment mate off on a fly golf week, I called work that I was snowed in. Impulsive, you thought my routine. I spent years scraping through snow no one else manufactured. You gave up telling me to stop. Worse was the early sobriety, years of it, drunk on the gravelly voices of obvious men. Now that's done. You have my Irish tongue. Rage at all that's gone over the sea, under the hill, centuries of word, sharp as briar in mist. And this one is, I grew up Irish Catholic. I was very devout. And then I hit puberty. Game over. My dirty yes to life. At what point now does saying no redeem a girl? The long consequence of Catholic education is not fear of hell or waking late, but that spent agility. When I eat no meat on Friday, no soul exits purgatory. No necking and no petting, nor just how far to go was ever fun, among the paralyzing imprint of purloined Hebrew metaphor, lost sheep, prodigal sons. I failed to arrive where manna showered, nor did I strike water from a rock, nor Goliath with one. My faith in miracles runs to the chance, panting, extreme unction, where absolved I'll nod off without sin, alongside the flaw that makes loss worth singing. A Philistine inclines over girlhood's shards, hosts of torn love letters, dusting the way down. And before I start Ember Days, I just want to say I am grateful to the editors of all the magazines that first published poems that are in my books, including Ubu, which Ken read from, and also to the editors of thematic or best of anthologies, some of which I have up here if you'd like to look at them later. Nuclear Impact, Wild Gods, The Ecstatic, Rumors, Secrets, and Lies. So from Ember Days, I'm going to read you a couple of yarns about places where I've lived.
Can you read the page numbers?
Oh, yes, I will read the page numbers, 41. Thank you for asking, and you may have to keep reminding me, the people who like this. This poem is occasioned by a place my friend and I would go play in summertime, and a discovery there. And the very end of the poem harks back to the national election of 1960, which we had worked very hard for, electing that president. 1961, Springfield Avenue. After lemon lime syrup and fizz at the corner soda fountain, Linda Ambliss and I crossed the uncut grass in a summer light free of mosquitoes, daisies wheeling at our knees. There was nothing anyone could tell us. Halfway back from the walk downtown, where we'd face Betty and Veronica in the comics racks, we opened the front door of the abandoned house. The ivory wallpaper had wrinkled above floorboards bare and wide. Inside, on a table beneath bold-faced titles in the Delineator of 1895, this is an actual artifact that I still have. In the Delineator of 1895, 2 columns of cramped words, sometimes parted for line drawings, iron mattocks, curved ash handles, whalebone stays, silk seal plush capes, bitters for a lady's palpitations, essential items to be ordered through the mail, none of which we'd seen in Miles Kimball catalogs or on the rare city trip to Kimball's. Thanks to an engineer at Bell Labs up the hill who'd insisted the transistor's strength was its small size, there was a world that rock and roll was helping us invent through a wire in one ear. We sank with the delineator on a sofa to gaze at print in such proportions that our histories of Hawaii, Iceland, Kon-Tiki, and Little Women could have filled out pages 1 through 150 in that catalog. I thumbed through rick-rack samples for the seamstress, mazurkas scored for the piano, oxygen home remedies. I thought about young women who in 1895 began to queue for factory work shifts instead of household service. The sofa, not as soft as over Linda's, where we shrank before the flying saucers of Way Out, and I, who was never left alone at home to watch TV, pretended comprehension of Tonight Show jokes. Seated alphabetically beneath fluorescent lights, we'd recite Macefield's Running Tide. We'd chant 1 times 1 through 12 times 12 and memorize by heart our catechism. We'd stroll by leveled limed lawns, each with a sapling 6 feet from a new granite curb, to the library for Mrs. Proctor's patient tongue's lick of a peony sticker, my 7th summer reader sheet, almost done with garden flowers. Almost in 608, the whistling Erie Lackawanna, bearing fathers who had all day checked column totals for the sales of picture tubes. The delineator advertised Chautauqua's literary and scientific circles, their 17th. Thomas Edison had wired their hotel. Linda rummaged through the desk's damp must, then squeezed the drawer back in its casing. I tapped floors for a trap door. We wanted clues about someone, briefly absent, who had filled the uncapped inkwell to write the winter order. Tea, spice, baking powder, instructions for point lace, doily patterns, Dr. Thomas's complexion soap. The spray truck rumbled by, going to refill the tank with DDT. Linda rasped to me, "At night, a girl can bleed." The fountain pen was left upon the desk. There was a long staircase to ascend. Had she been incorrigible, ignored the ads, absorbed sheet music, been made to practice until practice made perfect? Had she, with best friend, walked about 10-year-olds believing in their nation on a vexed election night? Had there hovered in the crisp, uncertain sky 3 saucers of light? I saw them really. I saw them that night. Okay, in 1975, we're going to advance rapidly. In 1975, I lived in Sausalito, California, on the water, when it didn't cost much money. And I'll give you an update on the sound that's mentioned in the poem at the end. As though finny folk would flip, as yet unknowing that fish talk, ragamuffins living on the cast-offs of the rich believed the sound was Russian sonar or the CIA broadcast of operatives who spiked the Bay Area's office Kool-Aid, rather than a feature of the tete-a-tetes of simple fish whose school colors matched the weather gray of houseboat hulls. Echolalia in those days and echelons were common. This is page 13, I'm sorry, I forgot. In rank water beneath the houseboats of Sausalito in the mid-70s, plain fin midshipmen hummed. Echolocation was some imagined edge of language for the experts when anyone worth his salt could hyphenate. In 75, you could nearly find Tallulah Bankhead still alive, but no animal sound was believed to signify not dolphins, not elephants, not gadzooks and hex emissions of plain fin midshipmen. It took a Cornell neurobiologist who dined in gloves in the lab building's cafeteria sometime in the late 90s to determine the source of the sound. By her time, the houseboaters had stopped accusing anyone of spying on their lives, for they had bottomed out. They were renting basement studios, ordinances word processed skillfully by cronies of the rich had made the docks accessible only to other cronies. At that time, and sometimes even today, not all midshipmen are commissioned. In January, I was startled at one of Cornell's little, summaries of what's new, that someone had recorded this sound, and you can go and listen to it now online, the fish. Okay. I thought I was supposed to write novels when I was in college, and so I wrote these melodramatic 4-page things that didn't last, but that core of my teenage belief that people read novels is still true, even though when sometimes something happens, people are prone to remark, you should write a poem about that. And I don't do that. I don't direct my poems to what's happened to me. I write fictions mostly and increasingly. And this poem is on the internet. It's on the Best American Poetry. And so people believe I was on this TV show. The origin of this poem was a friend's conversation about 30 years ago where I heard about this show that I'm completely unfamiliar with. And the show and the poem are called Up With People, page 11. I remember the opening salute, the hours of taping and reshoot, the show's chief sponsor, Babbo. I'd had to apply. It floors me now. The ticked questionnaire on American history, the patriotic essay I composed so eagerly, a stalk among the standing waves of grain. During commercial breaks for cleanser, I tended my tender self-regard, inked in every anacrostic in the book, won all spelling bees. Deadlines colder than 0 Kelvin in the outer regions before sleep carried dust I could not fathom. 3, 2, 1, and camera rolled, the rest of the cast singing out. They could not work me into their permanent youth corps. Some they did, gathered at the 30-year reunion, unbroken on the moving belt of hearty cereal, furtive sex, and overtime. I would have failed at reminiscing between dances, blank on what I'd looked like, what I'd said. Infinitives is a poem that has been reprinted, anthologized. I think it's on my website too. This is page 4, and now it's in a book. So here it is. Infinitives. To admit fields are on fire, oil fields, though we do not yet see them burning. To remember Our grandparents sweltered each summer, waiting for the streetcar, for nightfall. To irrigate loosened earth with native water, to bail out the seed banks, to chew our food, to call the bluff of the brand name the marketing genius, to digest Reese's burnt to a crisp threshold, to savor our craving, to satiation, to be free of litter strewn beyond us, steering through the Hesperides, sacred groves, blessed isles, past the ghost of a man on the moon's new frontier. Our course set for the destitute sunset. This is the anthology, which is a wonderful publication from Yorkshire that you can find out about online. And now for the Irish, again here. The book's dedication begins to Ellen Carr, midwife, and Michael Fitzgerald, iron welder, who traded the famine roads of Mayo and Roscommon for the row houses of Philadelphia, ancestors. Page 48, Irish Eye. I don't have to hold my face on. Where to begin? Liberal anti-clerical goings on every night of the week, especially sober? A perpetual past beginning the future. Cold nights, crickets don't get to sing, so they rub legs all day in the grass. Day after day, being a carbuncle. Sepia veers on laser printer. A box of boxes, a bag of bags. Grandmother's famished frown leans in recognition. And I'm going to read that poem that Ken read, the excerpt from Abel. It's on page 54. I had a 1-hour tutorial one time with Allen Ginsberg, and he made a little contribution to this poem by asking me a question that I had to stay with. And this and the next poem that I'm going to read are two of the ones that won the ILS, International Literary Seminars Fence, first prize in poetry. And that's a prize that, fingers crossed, will land me in Kenya for most of July. And these poems are forthcoming in Fence later this year. And I encourage you, if you want to subscribe to one literary magazine, this is a socially involved and committed magazine, FENCE, and it's an independent magazine. Abel. We won the war. We sailed the seas. We burned the barren. We stormed the steeples. We aped the angels. We carved the carcass. We paged the peasant. We tamed the trees. We mocked the mother. We squared the circle. We moved the mountain. We primed the pump. We kicked the can. We bound the beast. We hailed the hero. We scaled the snake. We broke the breeze. We coined the coward. We drank the dregs. We left the lurch. We oiled the ocean. We arched the anguish. We rushed the river. We loved the Lord. We crawled the chasm. We bore the burden. We fired the furnace. We sank the stars. We flew the flag. We won the war. Did you hear? The war. The war, did you hear? Lincoln in another bardo. 68. That was a good year. That was before Ken and I came to college. Had a lot to do with why we came to college. Lincoln in another bardo. If aluminum foil hadn't more glints, a crow would lift me up for nesting matter. There's an off chance she might pilfer me for crowning ornament. One less loose copper. Copper I am, not iron, though a long ways from the silver tongue of thy prophets. I shine in the footsteps of passers-by. I shine small and round and presidential. Do you see me slow to anger, gracious and merciful, abiding in steadfast love? You would seem to be addressing old envelopes stamped with my visage. Games and prizes, land and research have waylaid your prodigal feet. I don't want to hold you up, but I do. The arc of history could bend with you. A poem for winter. Kissing it goodbye today, are we? Page 45. The Great Bear in Winter. She's not fond. She sometimes cuffs you down about 4 when the shadows have stretched your plans to ribbons. It's not right. You roll up cranky. Several hours later, lost in deep snow, you'll never make tracks. She's gone to the sky, and you're stuck, not content to luxuriate as a fairy ball, feeding on your own fat with that winter gift. Can they really manage all season in hollow trees? You envy her steadiness. She shines in her kingdom, and you know she'll elude you all night. I'll end with a poem to welcome spring. Earthly Mishaps, page 52. And the inspiration for this was a garden in Scotland. Faint humming, inexorable in the damp below the ruined walled castle garden. Mare's tail, that's a plant. Mare's tail tunnels an 8-foot root. Sly boots, I've spaded the circle, reached to my elbow. Still, the plant breaks. As Eve brought a man his labor, it will multiply tenfold. I shot for survival, a sprayer to level pride, melancholy, and unwanted shoots. The canister is lowered from its shelf, bagged in plastic. The till rings. Keys in hand, I see the car park as a horse-tracked swale, where Cadfael leads his roan, saddle-bagged with an apothecary box. Medieval herbicide? As he stumps through mud, the monk's brass scale tips. One pan sways with the bitterness of interrupted life. The other, Eve's radical helplessness. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the poets who are here, all the writers who are here, all the readers who are here, all the hearers who are here.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
And also I have postcards, if you want to mail one to a friend with a recommendation for, purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.